Are you ready to study new knowledge about life? If yes, then you will be first to know about wave model of brain. You will see your true face for the first time. And you first understand how simple it is to make yourself and your life better. Human brain contains many mysteries, but all these inmost and deepest mysteries is recorded in one completely secret document, which you constantly and curiously present to the world. Look out, it is your face.
Digital psychology. Digital psychology is based on the wave model of brain, because the brain emits electromagnetic waves. Many natural phenomena are reflected in the human brain. For example, asymmetry. Two hemispheres perform different functions. Coherency, coordinated course of oscillatory processes in cerebral hemispheres. Fractality, repetition of forms at different scales. In this regard, the study of wave processes in the brain and the structure of the human psyche allows us to understand the laws of a person's relationship with nature and society, as well as the underlying motivations of human behavior. To determine the psychological state of a person, it is important to know two parameters of the brain: the dominance of one of the hemispheres and the consistency between them. These parameters are determined by measuring difference in amplitudes and coherence of electromagnetic waves in their hemispheres. In addition, the state of the hemispheres is reflected on face of a person in the form of asymmetries of the face and asymmetries of emotions on the right and left sides of the face. Methods have been found for determining these parameters of brain, both directly, by measuring radiation of brain, and indirectly, by analyzing the image of the face using a video computer system. The same system allows you to recognize a person and to correct his psychophysical state on basis of biological feedback, as well as to find ways to harmonize personality in relationships. As a result of a person's psychophysical state diagnosis, his location is determined in universal table of psychological types, as well as in three-dimensional diagram based on the wave model of brain. The computer gives out a complete personality profile and recommendations for changing the way of life and the way of thinking in order to solve life problems. Frequently asked questions. How does the result of video computer diagnostics depend on momentary mood and changes in facial expressions? It must be said that the result of video computer diagnostics does not depend on momentary mood and changes in facial expressions, because this method does not take into account the shape and size of facial features. The method of video computer psychodiagnostics is based on the determination of face asymmetry and asymmetry of emotions on the face, which, in turn, depends on dominance of one of hemispheres and coherence between them. Asymmetry of face and asymmetry of emotions on face, as a rule, have a steady nature. For example, consider a photo of the famous pop singer Valerie Mеладзе. It can be seen that the face is asymmetric. Let us consider in more detail. In order to better consider the asymmetry of emotion on the face, let's create two portraits. It is necessary to divide the face image into two parts and add the same half to each half. It turns out two faces. One is made up of two right halves, the other is made of two left halves. In order to better see the asymmetry of emotions on the face, we will make a smooth transition from the right portrait to the left portrait. In this case, changes occur, the emotion changes. This is the right portrait, this is the left portrait. The right portrait reflects internal state of a person. The left portrait, external state. We conventionally call the right hemisphere portrait spiritual, and the left hemispheric portrait, life. The right portrait reflects state of a person as a whole. The left, that is, life, reflects state now, at the moment. A spiritual portrait reflects his inner state, and a life portrait is a life mask, a life double, realization of a person at the moment. It is not difficult to notice that he frowns in a spiritual portrait, and rejoices in a life portrait. Let us tell him, do the opposite. Rejoice on the right side and frown on the left side. Will he be able to do this? It is unlikely. Study of his early photographs showed that such a situation, it is always there. The top photo was taken at his wedding. And here he smiles on the left but not on the right. Here is another photograph and here is the same situation. On the left he smiles, and frowns on the right. This situation is typical for people who are good performers. Asymmetry of face persists even when a person's facial expression changes, when he does it on purpose. In this case, we see that this person has an asymmetry of the face. The left side of his face subsides, and on the right side the tone is higher. What is on our left? This is his right side. There is a difference of angles. After that, he was asked to change facial expressions. For example, smile, but the asymmetry is preserved. The left side is still falling, and the tone on the right side is higher. Asymmetry has become more pronounced. In these photos, the famous American film actor Dennis Trejo is presented. The photos were taken at different times and in different circumstances, starting from early childhood, but as you can see, he has the same asymmetry in all the photos. A bias to the left. Computer defines the state of Dennis Trejo as logical impulsive, which is typical for actors. Judging by old manner, then this condition is closer to choleric. Here is another example. These photos show famous Canadian-American singer Neil Young. Photos were taken at different times, but he also has a characteristic asymmetry. He retains not only the asymmetry of the face, but also asymmetry of emotions on the face. In right portrait he is everywhere, pleased, smiling. In the left portrait, dissatisfied, frowns. And this situation persists for many years. 19th-century Italian psychiatrist Cesare Lombroso identified criminals by their appearance. In some cases, as for example, in these photographs, Lombroso did recognize the criminals, which is not so difficult, since in extreme cases there is an interdependence between the shape of face and the content of person. Here, all these nice people with the correct facial features, in fact, are maniacs, but perhaps, according to Lombroso's theory, one could recognize them as criminals. One of them, Alexander Pichushkin, killed 48 people. He is also known as the Bitsa maniac because he killed in Bitsa Park, in Moscow. Another woman, Beverly Elliott, nicknamed the Angel of Death, an English nurse, killed 4 children in 1991 and caused serious harm to health of 5 more. Irma Grese, the Angel of Death, the beautiful monster, the most beautiful, and the most cruel warden in a concentration camp. She beat female prisoners to death and enjoyed arbitrary shooting of prisoners. To identify criminals with such correct and beautiful faces, Lombroso's theory no longer works. To recognize the quality of people, the use of more subtle, indirect and deeper features is required. Frequently asked questions. Sometimes they ask. After correction, the person usually smiles, and maybe this is not a correction, but just a smile. Indeed, after correction, a person often smiles. But the improvement in a person's condition is not the result of smile. Smiling doesn't help. In this example, the woman smiled deliberately, to look happy, but her smile is forced. The face is skewed. There is swelling. The next photo was taken after correction. At the same time, she was not told to smile, but as a result of correction, she revived and her smile became natural. At the same time, characteristic changes occurred on her face. There is no skew, the swelling has decreased. It must be said that a person does not always smile after correction. Here's how in these examples. But there were characteristic changes on the face. When the brain is tuned and two hemispheres are coordinated with each other, two halves of face are also coordinated and the muscles are adjusted, as if errors are eliminated. For example, where the tone was decreased and part of the face subsided, the tone increased, and where, on contrary, the tone was increased, it decreased, and the eye turned down. This woman had plastic surgery to turn her eye down. Her right eye was turned up, but the operation did not help. In our experiment, her eye turned down, although we did not set such a goal. After brain is tuned, automatic adjustment takes place. Frequently asked questions 3. How does the correction take place? Video computer psychocorrection is based on visual and auditory feedback. A person sits down in front of the camera and the image of his face is entered into the computer. The computer synthesizes two new human faces. One face has two right-hand halves and the other has two left-hand halves. In these portraits, subconscious emotions are manifested, which can be very different from each other. A person observes his two portraits, in which subconscious emotions are manifested, and begins to realize them. In addition, the computer produces a text that reflects his subconscious psychological attitudes, which are voiced. These visual and auditory images, taken from his subconscious, trigger the mechanism of psychophysical self-regulation in the brain. This process is repeated cyclically until a sustainable result is achieved. Here is an example where signals from the brain and the face were simultaneously recorded. As you can see, the signals in the hemispheres are very different before the correction. This is reflected in the face, and two portraits are also very different, both in form and in emotions. After the correction, the signals in hemispheres became consistent with each other. This was reflected on the face and two portraits became similar to each other, in form and in positive emotions. As a result, the electromagnetic processes in the brain are regulated, the amplitudes of electromagnetic waves in the hemispheres are leveled and their coherence increases, which is reflected on the person's face. The face becomes more symmetrical and filled, wrinkles are smoothed, muscle tone is regulated and the person revives. The main change occurs in psychology. A person becomes more adequate, the stability of mental processes increases and logical and intuitive abilities are leveled. Video computer correction process takes 2 hours. Computer provides a complete personality profile and recommendations for changing lifestyle and way of thinking. Let's consider a few examples of correction. It took 2 hours between these photos of the same person, but for clarity, we will show a smooth transition of the face before correction into the face after correction. Within a few seconds, we will see the changes that took place in 2 hours. It must be said that as a result of the correction, changes occur simultaneously at the physiological level. Studies carried out over 3 months in a group of 10 people showed that almost all physiological data improved, especially the gerontological curve, that is, rejuvenation occurs. More precisely, not rejuvenation, but a return to your age, to your life program, to the best of your previous states. In general, personality reconstruction takes place. Frequently asked questions 4. How long does the correction result last? As a result of video-computer psychocorrection, a person receives a strong positive impulse and flies upward according to this scheme. But he has a tendency to go back to his usual state, especially if you find yourself in the same traumatic situation. Therefore, the computer gives detailed recommendations for changing lifestyle and way of thinking. If a person adheres to these recommendations, then he will have a positive result at a certain level. But if he does not adhere, then in a couple of months he will come back. True. Not to the end, some positive result will still remain. Video-computer psychocorrection is not magic. You have to work. A person can also correct himself, but sometimes he needs the help of a specialist. And if a specialist is armed with modern technologies, then the probability of positive result increases. In the universal table of psychological types, a person can be in any part, but this does not mean that he is good or bad. There are no good or bad spots in this scheme. We do not divide people into good and bad, strong and weak. Each person is weak in something, but strong in something. Sometimes a steady state is required, and sometimes impulsivity helps. It is good if a person consciously controls his condition. To control yourself, it would not hurt to master new knowledge in the field of digital psychology. The methods of digital psychology and video-computer psychodiagnostics are successfully applied to solve the following problems: recruitment, team building, security service, psychological consultations, solving relationship problems, resolution of conflict situations, complex health improvement, and also in order to become a manager. If a person masters the methods of objective psychology and the corresponding technologies, then he becomes a manager, i.e., can control himself and other people. He is able to easily recognize any person and make an adequate forecast of his behavior in an extreme situation. Possessing this knowledge, a person receives social superiority. He recognizes danger earlier than others and, therefore, can become a leader who is trusted and listened to. In our school, everyone can, in a short time, acquire new knowledge in the field of objective psychology and learn how to put into practice the video-computer system to recognize and correct the psychophysical state of a person and, thus, help himself and others learn new knowledge and manage